With Leigh from 8-Minute Energy. 8-Minute Energy is kind of a really exciting company, one, because of the amount of solar and storage that you guys have kind of installed. I'm going to let you come up and take it over.
Where's the Hi, I'm Leigh, Zanone. With 8-Minute Energy, I am the Director of Operations and Asset Management, and then I manage our research and development that we do on technology for installation in our projects. So just give me a second. While he's getting that up, 8-Minute Energy, we're based in El Dorado Hills. We have an office in San Francisco and Los Angeles. We're primarily a greenfield developer, so we start from raw land, and we build projects at the utility scale, transmission interconnection level. So we don't build commercial or residential projects, but very, very large projects. And typically we're building 5 to 6 at a time in a certain phase. And these types of projects, this type of capital investment, et cetera, they take multiple years from conception till actual execution. And I'll kind of go through some of the ones that we've executed recently and how we do it. So it's a little bit of history about us. Our mission is to make solar energy abundant and to be the industry leader in lowering the cost of dispatchable solar PV. And what I mean by dispatchable is integrating storage so that we take the variance of weather out of the equation with solar projects. So kind of our approach, we have 10 gigawatts of projects that we're developing across the United States. We're historically a California developer. All of our historical projects, the gigawatt we have, they're all in Southern California, primarily in the Imperial Valley near the Mexican border and in the Mojave and Palm Desert east of Los Angeles. And then we have one project in Bakersfield. Given those projects, how the revenue structure works is we sign a PPA with the utility, so they buy the energy from us at typically a fixed price or a time of use price, and that's changing a little bit. So I can maybe talk about that a little bit at the end about how we see pricing changing with solar projects going forward. Given that much, we've raised $3 billion to invest in these projects. Across the major financial institutions, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, US Bank, et cetera. Kind of 2 projects that we have. One that we just finished, 800 megawatts Mount Signal, that's down in Imperial Irrigation District. It's 3 clusters of projects. And then Eagle Shadow Mountain is 420 megawatts. We signed the PPA recently. The PPA for this is $23.47, I think. I can't remember the exact cents, which is one of the lowest cost solar projects and one of the lowest cost power plants in the world. And we're in process of developing that right now. We'll build it next year and the year after. So just a picture of what the scale of what we're talking about here is. With the 2 Springbok cluster projects, I deal with those a lot on the operations and maintenance side. We have the Redwood cluster, that's east of Bakersfield. Mount Signal, I mentioned, is down in Imperial Valley, and then Calipatria is also down in Southern California. And then going forward, we have about 10 gigawatts of projects in development. So as you see, these are 100, 200 megawatts is typically how we build it. And so some of those are early stage and some of those are much later stage. So as I said, we kind of started in California. We're based in California. Our founders were one's from Sacramento, one's from Los Angeles, and we developed with all 4 large California utilities: PG&E, SCE, SDG&E, and LADWP. We built the first project that beat traditional fossil fuel, right? So we're that grid parity curve when I've been doing solar for almost 15 years now. So solar was originally much more expensive on a cost of energy basis, but now it is much cheaper than traditional fossil fuel power plants. And we're expanding eastward. We're currently developing a couple projects in Texas, and those are a little bit different. Those aren't PPAs, that's what I said before. They're actually wholesale energy projects, so we trade the energy in real time on the ERCOT market, and all of our revenue structure is based around that. And that's kind of the way the Texas market works. So we don't really have PPAs, but given that, there's a lot more variance in the revenue, so there's a lot more risk and a lot more work in kind of bundling up the project model together. So as I said, we're a greenfield development. Our competitive edge is really optimizing every single step that we have here. So we have an amazing transmission analysis team. So they look at the grid across the United States. They find out where is there congestion, where is there really need for additional capacity of energy, where is there an ability to get an interconnection, and they pinpoint those locations from a grid demand standpoint. And then our land team kind of goes and finds what's the most optimal land based on price and buildability. So we're not like having to like build on the side of a mountain, right? You know, flat, easy to work. Then, of course, based on the interconnection study, that kind of tells us what the capacity of that line may allow for, how much PV we can put on there. Then we go through the environmental permitting, and I'll talk about that in a lot more detail. Just because we're a solar company, we have that our kind of clean tech and environmental consciousness. So we're very, very, very dedicated to not only being environmentally compliant, but going above and beyond and helping our environmental community where we build our projects. Then, of course, we go through engineering, getting the revenue with the utility, and then finding a project finance group to put it together. Then it's built, and then it's operated, and that's really what I do. So I'm at the end. I see the whole picture, every decision that's made before that. Given that process and kind of the team that we have, which is an excellent team, our success rate at taking a project from that first kind of level to actually building it is 76%, and the market is basically 9%. So we've been very effective at being successful at getting projects all the way through this stage. So as we've historically been PV, we're moving to energy storage. Almost every project we're bidding right now into a different PPA has an energy storage component to it. And there's quite a few reasons for that, and I'll kind of go through what they are. What it allows for is it allows for PV to really be, as I said before, a dispatchable energy resource. It allows for the grid and the utility in that location to use a PV system to do everything that they've done with traditional dispatchable units that they can ramp up and ramp down, and actually more than a lot of those, because the response time of a lithium-ion battery system is pretty much instantaneous. So if I need extra voltage, extra frequency, whatever it might be, it's seconds, whereas like some gas turbine, it's got an inertia, it's kind of slow to do different things. So there's a ton of grid support, and we can customize the solution to the exact node and the exact grid issues that are on that project, and then change it over time as more solar goes on or different power plants come offline on that transmission line. So we can do two. We can do either solar PV plus storage, which is most of what we do, but then we occasionally also look at standalone storage locations, especially on the distribution network or near a particular load. Solar plus storage, we need a lot of land for the solar, so that tends to be out away from the major cities where the land is cheap and available and good for solar. So, as I said before, energy storage allows for all of these different product lines. We can take solar that is up and down, whatever, the cloud comes by, solar drops, cloud goes away, solar comes up. We can smooth that out so it's not variance solar by itself. In addition, we have this extra support here, so if something else happens on the line, there's a huge load that jumps up, some fault anywhere in the system, they may need us to support the frequency, may need us to support the voltage. And if the whole system goes down and they need an emergency power black start system, a solar system can basically black start and kickstart the grid really easily. So, and then the last thing is that, I don't know if any of you know of the Cal-ISO duck curve. It's a pretty famous chart where solar generates in the middle of the day, so our demand drops down to almost zero, and then solar stops going off and the demand kicks up because of air conditioning late in the afternoon and evening, and then there's this huge ramp that happens in the late afternoon in California because of how much solar has been installed in California. Well, what batteries, number one, what most California utilities are looking for is to take that solar and move it out 4 hours. So it matches that ramp up in demand, and you kind of cut back the production at noon on an afternoon. And so that's what we call the time shift right there. So that's what I'd say most current projects, that's their number one value of the storage with the solar project, but all this other stuff is just gravy really for them, I would say. And then, so how we decide what technologies to put in our projects. We have a robust engineering and research and development team across the San Francisco and El Dorado Hills offices. I have a research and development facility in Rancho Cordova. And so what we do is we test individual products from all the manufacturers for solar panels and for batteries primarily. And we're looking for reliability, performance, flexibility in different conditions, and see how they work across the board. As new technologies come online, we add them in there and we see how they perform against what we consider a baseline and how that might change our revenue and cost structures. We run all kinds of different experiments. We're also trying some stuff that's kind of outside of the box. A new technology that's come out recently is what we call bifacial modules. So solar panels actually generating energy from the backside, and it's adding total energy output of the same solar panel. And so we're also testing a bunch of different reflectivity, ground coatings that we could possibly do to kind of maximize that system. Currently, we're only running lithium-ion battery tests, but we are looking at additional storage functions, flywheels, pump storage, other sort of chemical batteries that are out there. And so, yeah, we're kind of trying both on both sides, our generation and our storage. We would like to see anything out there that could kind of move the needle from what's traditionally being built. So, last couple of slides, like I said, in addition to building solar projects as a solar company and having an environmental bent, we partner with local environmental groups to drive adoption and to support the stewardship of our shared resources. So we build a lot of projects down in the Palm Desert. The Desert Tortoise is a good friend of ours. We work in a lot of different ways, months, years before we come on a project to make sure that the desert tortoises that's their natural habitat, that they're not impacted by our construction, they're not impacted by our project, and we're really proud of that. And it's a thing we track very, very closely well through the project development. And the last thing, in addition to kind of our environmental stewardship, we really like to partner with our communities where we build these projects. So we have a high school vocational and internship program. We employ hundreds of, if not thousands of people during the construction phase, and then we employ dozens to hundreds kind of in the operations phase on the project. We also had a school art program for elementary students in California, and then we did support for first robotics competition to kind of help the next generation build the robotics and be the next generation of leaders. So that's what I got. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll do a short Q&A. Make sure we repeat the questions.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions?
How many people work in the local area here, El Dorado Hills and Rancho Cordova?
We have like 20, I think. Yeah, 20 here. So we're actually not a huge company. We only have 75 people total. So.
But still, it's
Yeah.
nice to have the company here, background.
Yeah, our entire storage team is here. Most of the solar development is in San Francisco, and then all the land development is down in Southern California, where we tend to build a project. So.
Well, that's great. I'm sure, Mike, you want to talk to 8 Minute Energy at some point about student projects in the availability.
I had a question. You said you're selling your energy on the energy market, or starting to do that, I
Mhm.
guess, in the PPA. My question is, remember the old days of Enron and the deregulation and how crazy things went? Is this having a stabilizing effect on the energy market, or can you comment a little bit?
So the question was, is this having a stabilizing effect on the energy market? In a sense, yeah. So what'll eventually happen is, the nice thing about solar is that or storage is that it is very flexible. So if you have these spikes in pricing, which is basically an imbalance of supply and demand, you can hold your storage for that spike and then give extra supply. So it's helping with the reliability by keeping the grid overall fairly well balanced. And from a financial standpoint, like, you're capturing that value because there's this kind of spike, and this is where you get a big chunk of your revenue. So, for example, in the Texas projects, we'll make 20% of our revenue throughout, the spring, et cetera. But then in late summer, there will be certain hours or days where you have these spikes in demand where the prices will jump, and then that's where we'll capture a lot of the revenue on the overall project.
And that revenue capture is in the day-ahead market typically in Texas?
Yeah.
Right.
So when you were talking about your success rate, you said that 8 Minute has about a 76% success rate, whereas competitors have about 9. What processes would you say are in place that allows 8 Minute to enjoy such a high success rate? And why haven't your competitors been able to replicate those successes?
I would say there's 3 things. The first one is that our transmission team, we have a lot of people that came out of the Cal ISO, came out of PG&E, et cetera, that like really understood the grid, like really understood where the most value from the grid stood. That was number 1. Number 2 is that our founder and CEO came out of the solar panel industry, and he forecast the drop in solar prices better than anybody else. So we were able to offer PPAs that were cheaper than anybody else doing it, which they were like, oh, you'll never make money doing that. And actually, by the time we built it 3 years down the road, we still made a ton of money because the curve dropped even faster than he thought, and he was super aggressive. And then the third one is really the land development and the permitting around that, right? So California, highly regulated environmental market, so understanding exactly how to deal with the county and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, making sure that you get all your regulations and that you're not blocked in some way like that is, it takes a lot of focus and a lot of effort. And so I'd say those are the 3 ways that we've kind of really been successful.
If you had it to do over again as a company, could you think of one thing that you would have done differently in the growth and development of 8 Minute Energy?
We probably would have expanded east faster than we did. That's probably what we would have moved out to. I mean, only now have we really started hitting Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, et cetera. We have a couple competitors that really successful. The North Carolina market, the way that it's set up from a regulatory standpoint and an incentive standpoint, was a great market. It still is, but has been for the last 3-4 years. We never really were able to build any projects there. Florida, et cetera. So, just kind of expand outwards.
Just a quick question about project finance. Carry the projects on your balance sheet, or are each of them a separate financial entity?
They're each a separate financial entity. Yeah.
Charlie?
Yeah, off to the side question. I was talking to a seasoned investor the other night about building the negative social and environmental impact amelioration into the business that they were financing. They said, no, it's too, most companies can't do that. It's too distracting, too expensive. Why did you guys do that and build what you said with some pride in on your sustainability items that you listed as part of your value creation?
So the question was why did, if I understand this correctly, why did we choose to have minimal or negative environmental impact on the projects that we developed, and why was that a business model, given that it's an additional expense? Well, 1, it's the right thing to do. 2, it allows us to be a good steward. It helps us with our compliance and permitting. I mean, in a lot of these cases, we're doing it. We're also regulated to do it. So, for example, with the desert tortoise, we're really proud of that. But at the same token, if you damage a desert tortoise constructing, it's like a $10,000 fine. It's like every time it happens. So, like, just fixing that at the beginning and making sure that doesn't happen, you kind of eliminate that risk. So, but yeah, it's the same thing. We also do this, we do this with plant life. So Russian thistle in the Palm Desert is a terrible invasive species, and it's also not good for operations of projects. So we eliminate thousands of acres of Russian thistle in the Palm Desert because our projects are between 600 and 1,000 acres a piece. So, and we eliminate all the Russian thistle and then reseed with native grasses to kind of bring back the native grasses in the desert there.
But no collusion.
No collusion.
You said that the kind of the first round of solar contracts for all PPAs.
Mhm.
What are the solar plus storage projects? What's the contracts with the LLCs like for like the next generation
Um,
projects?
so there's kind of two major ones. One is that we still do PPA. Well, there's three actually. So there's PPAs where we have a solar PPA price and a storage PPA price, and then it's just kind of bundled together, and then it's the total megawatt hours delivered. The second one is like a solar PPA and then a capacity payment just for the capacity of the storage on the project, which is a monthly capacity payment that the utility pays kind of however they use it. And then the third one is a market project, which is like we don't have a PPA, we connect it to the transmission line, and then we're just a wholesale trader, right? Because now it's hard to be a wholesale trader, and CalISO is still trying to figure out exactly how to do the rules around this, because you can't be a wholesale trader with PV, because I can't forecast what tomorrow at 2 will be with any accuracy, and if you miss forecast and you don't have the energy, then you have to pay the fines and penalties. But with storage, you can basically eliminate that variability of the weather, and then you can just become a wholesale power producer.
So are you doing those in California or just in?
Well, CalISO, we're talking to them pretty regularly. There's still a couple technical hurdles around the metering and the settlement and their need for dispatchability that they haven't totally figured out all the pieces of that. So the market's only partially there. But I would expect that some of our projects right now that are in early stage development that are maybe on a PPA path will just transition to a CAISO wholesale market in the next 6 to 12 months.
This week, I've had some disturbing conversations on the consequences of PG&E filing bankruptcy for
Mhm.
clean energy. And bankruptcy judges have like unlimited power to change anything about a company in order to get it back on its feet, including repudiating PPA contracts.
Yes?
And one would hope rationality prevails, and it would only be high-priced PPA contracts that,
Well, one would hope neither of those either, but
yeah, experience indicates that things are not always rational. And, I mean, when the solar PV industry was starting and you got the big solar farms, I mean, there were some pretty high prices in the initial
that is
PPAs.
correct, yes.
Have you guys thought about this consequence, and if there'd be an opportunity to come in and redo any of those projects to get them right side up with a lower PPA, or?
Right side up from PG&E's perspective?
From a business perspective.
I mean, they were the prices that they were at the time, given the costs of the technology at the time. So if PG&E came back, and we have talked about this over the last 2 weeks, we have a few PPAs with them, and we're curious as how this. What I've heard so far is their bankruptcy is primarily around their liability towards starting forest fires, and we don't expect that they'll do anything with generation. That also, couple suppliers have filing with FERC to say you can't do this because FERC has oversight over the generation side of the business. So we wouldn't really come in and kind of try and take over a PPA in that case. I mean, I would love to just take over a PPA that has the prices that they have. And kind of the scale he's talking about is like there are certain PPAs, large scale projects built 7, 8 years ago that are $100, $110 a megawatt hour. Whereas I said our Nevada project is $23 a megawatt hour. So a factor of 5. So yeah, we don't expect that they're going to do that. And the other thing is that they have 100% RPS. So why would they want to go backwards, right? Like why would they want to reduce their renewable capacity unless it's very, very just terrible for them. I would expect that if they do that to any PPAs, it would be less than 10, I would think.
Good. Bankruptcy judges have a way of ignoring all the other aspects other than just generating money and giving it to creditors.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Commercial solar projects years ago were just solar.
Mm-hmm.
Now storage is becoming a major part. What triggered that? Was there a price threshold on storage, or?
I think it's 2 parts. I think part of it is it's a price threshold. Your levelized cost of energy for solar plus storage being lower than just the cost of energy as a commercial procurer from the local utility based on the cost of the technology. The second thing is that just the availability of it and the availability of the analytics around that, right? So I actually still think it's a very underutilized market. I think there are certain consumers that have super high demand charges that if they just eliminated the demand charge with storage only, it probably pays for itself, right? And then in addition to that, you could do PV plus storage and kind of just have the energy at a much lower cost, right? So you can't build a commercial project at $23 a megawatt hour or 2.3 cents a kilowatt hour, but you could build one for double that, right? 4.6, and that's pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good to industrial, commercial tariff rates, depending on where you are in the country. So, and that's not even including if you have a certain manufacturing plant that just has a humongous demand spike at even if it's one day in the month, like you're going to get billed for that demand spike. And if you can eliminate 50% of that, even that of itself will have a lot of payback.
Is your Nevada project a solar plus storage?
So that's an interesting question. It's a solar only right now, but NV Energy has basically put out a bid to add storage to our project. Now, whether or not we will add storage to our project or someone else will add storage to our project, I don't know, but I hope it's us. Yeah.
But that would be higher than 23 cents.
Yeah, that's separate pricing. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Leigh.